Welcome to the ELP Revolutionized Leadership webinar. This webinar is for Teen Challenge leaders and leaders in any organization, actually. We are so glad that you could join us either live or on the recorded webinar. Today we have with us a few new persons from Teen Challenge centers. We have Minnesota Teen Challenge on, Eric Vagel. Thanks for joining us this month, Eric. We also have Jason Easter, our New Hope Outreach Director, and Teen Challenge Delmarva, St. Clair Sterling, who is our Program Manager at Teen Challenge Delmarva. I just want to remind you of why we're here and why we do a Revolutionized Leadership webinar every month. The intent of the ELP Revolutionized Leadership webinar is to raise up the next generation of TC leaders who will carry out our God-given mission and be infused with the DNA of Teen Challenge. And as leaders, you guys are the key to this process. So our goal is to support you and give you all the tools that you can get so that you can grow in your own effectiveness as leaders. This morning we want to talk about organizational health and just a little bit about what will that look like. How can we move from a dysfunctional organization to a functional organization or functional culture? I just want to start out by just talking to you about just an experience I had yesterday with a friend of mine. I went to the local Muscogee County jail to look for a guy who I met in at one of our Living Free Inside groups, and this guy is a very big guy, 6'3" tall, maybe 300 plus pounds. African-American guy, and he started coming to our Living Free groups because he actually had served 30 years in prison for something that happened, and he was coming for maybe 6 to 7 weeks out of the 8 week or 9 weeks that we have for Living Free. And he had called me 2 weeks ago and told me that he got picked up for violating his probation. And so he was back in jail. And so I told him, okay, well, I'll come and visit you in prison. And when I got there yesterday, as he came up to the screen, I could see that he had a broad smile on his face. And then the first thing he said to me was, "Miss Andrea, you came to visit me. I didn't know you would come to visit me." So I said to him, I said, "Nathaniel, why did you think I wouldn't come to visit you?" I said I would. And he basically told me a story of his experience with the body of Christ, where a lot of people would tell him things that they would do for him, or they will say what they would give to him. And what usually happens is people will talk, but they would not walk what they were talking. They would give him expectations and tell him what they're going to do, but they wouldn't follow through. And that's a culture, I believe, that we want to break in the body of Christ. For Nathaniel, I said, my value is this. If I say that I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. My yes is my yes, my no is my no, and my actions follow that. I personally believe that a healthy culture honors the people in that culture. I believe that a healthy culture actually looks at the human soul as valuable. The person is valuable. They have exalted dignity, they have exalted worth, and they have exalted potential. And healthy cultures produce healthy people. I was looking at a statistic recently, and it was actually a Gallup poll which says that Disengaged employees cost the American economy $350 billion per year in lost productivity. And I actually was mulling over this, and as I was mulling over this, I actually did a little bit of research regarding our own region, stuff like what it cost us for workers' comp, what it cost us for unemployment. And as I sift through this information, I recognize as well that if we could increase the engagement of our employees by 5%, we would increase our productivity in the organization by $40 million per year. A healthy culture is actually an instrument that serves the human biological and psychological needs of the individual. It unites individuals into social structures. And it's also a key factor that impacts the employee satisfaction, how they get engaged in the organization, how much buy-in that they have in the organization, and the overall productivity of the organization. So when you think about culture, you may not realize how much the leader, the person who founded the organization, has to do with how the culture operates. Culture is generally inherited from an organization's founders, and if enough time has passed and maybe the founder is not an active member of the organization any longer, the culture can almost sometimes operate as a sort of an automatic pilot, silently flying under the radar. And even when senior leaders recognize that the organization is off course, so few people have ever had any real experience in dealing with culture change. And that is left unaddressed, regardless of whether it is serving the overall goals of the organization or not. And that's a quote I got from Ken Blanchard in his white paper called Creating a Culture That Works. So why do we change our unhealthy cultures? It's because, as the image says, the question is, why don't we change our unhealthy cultures? It's because, as this image suggests, that we want to avoid risk at all costs. We want to avoid really hearing and understanding what people are saying about their experience in the culture. So I want to just do a little poll now. You guys have access to chat for those of you who are online and at your computers, but I wanted to just ask you to use your chat screen and answer this question. We're going to take a few minutes and get some results there. What is the culture others experience at your center? And just throw out some buzzwords, one-words, one-pointers, just short phrases of the type of culture that you believe that people experience at your center. I see some results coming in. Some people say it's team-oriented. Others might say there is an openness. Others might say innovation. Others might say there's a strong accountability that's happening there. Still, others might say there's risk-taking and that we are rewarded for what is done. One person described their organization culture as our culture is team-oriented and one of openness and innovation supported by accountability, risk-taking, and mistakes are accepted as a price for success. Individual and team performance is valued and rewarded. organization success and rewards are shared among the members of the team. So as you can see, some people say it's a family. You know, there's a group that says, you know, we are a family. And that's great. When you have a positive culture, I say it again, positive culture produces positive people. It produces productive people who are happy to come to work and do their jobs. Yet, in the same sense, we have persons who experience negative cultures. And negative cultures, another organization, the employees describe the culture as top-down management. We are told we can be open and express ideas, but it seems as though the decisions are made before the input is given. There's no collaboration. Still others will say, but it's a person can't be as candid as one might like to be without fear. So it's driven by fear, without fear of retribution. And there is a consequence in this negative culture. In Teen Challenge, 100% of our students who come to us enter our centers having neither hope nor a dream for their future. And the culture that they experience at Teen Challenge is going to shape their future for a lifetime. We want to create a safe environment where their hopes and their dreams can converge. Napoleon Bonaparte quoted as saying, the leader's role is to define reality and then give hope. To be an effective and enduring leader, you must perform the balancing act of helping your team members and the students, the staff, families, even your donors see the realities, yet offer hope for the future. When the leaders won't face reality, others rise up to fill this void. And if the leader is, on the other hand, becoming paranoid and pessimistic, he or she will suck the life and the spirit out of the team. When times are good, the balance between reality and hope takes care of itself. However, when adversity strikes, the two become decoupled and create a lot of friction. This is when the leader must begin to perform a balancing act to restore hope and engagement. So the reality and the hope must converge, and in that conversion, that's where you will find that people are able to achieve goals, people are able to achieve the end result, remembering that healthy cultures produce healthy people. A healthy culture honors God, it honors others, and it also honors the individual, it honors yourself. The leader must have the courage to build a fantastic, healthy, God-honoring culture, a culture that is flourishing, has a balance of people growing spiritually. People are moving along in their destinies. They're connected to the body of Christ. They're connected to a local church. They're connected to a coach within Teen Challenge, a recovery coach. They're connected to a mentor in their local church. They're seeing what a Christian lifestyle looks like, both as they are working in Teen Challenge and they're a student in Teen Challenge, but they're also seeing that in the church as well. So they're connected all around to actually fulfill their destinies. Make your culture a safe place where people can be themselves, where people have relationship, where people experience love, they experience a family, and where true accountability is invited. It's not forced on them. So I asked the question, how do you move your staff? How do you move your organization from being dysfunctional to being functional? And how do you create culture bearers? Patrick Lencioni has a great book called The Advantage, Why organizational health trumps everything else in business. And the first thing that he suggests that you do is to build a healthy, cohesive team. To build a cohesive team will require that there is trust. It's going to require that you have some passionate debate. It's going to require there is accountability, and that you're always focused on the end results of the organization. In that book, he talks about you create clarity. You tell people why you exist, why you have the goals that you have, why the purpose of the organization, and you also will have to define your values and the behaviors that you're asking that will drive those values. You also want to have a big, hairy, audacious goal. Have a vision that will excite and just energize people to accomplish an end result. And after you've got all those things together, then you want to over-communicate your clarity. You want to reinforce your clarity. It's a great training, and Carissa Corpenny, my boss, the director of corporate training, who is also on this webinar, she does a fantastic training with our staff at different centers about organizational health. And if you're interested in having that done at your center, I would suggest that you contact Carissa or myself about it, because that's a great training to help you move from a dysfunctional culture to a functional culture. The first thing we did when we went to these centers was we actually did surveys with the staff as to what they were experiencing in their cultures. We examined the underlying beliefs and assumptions that were influencing their existing behaviors. And we started at the top. As I said, we started with the senior leaders. We examined their own personal beliefs about getting things done. We talked. There was apologies that were made. We built new trust levels amongst the team. What you're doing in this anonymous survey is that you're looking to build a safe place where values are driven and people understand the environment of the team, the environment that you're going to operate in. When you create such an environment, then your team feels secure enough to freely apply their skills. When the environment is perceived as less than fair, or it doesn't consistently demonstrate your core values, then this creates a sense of, I don't care. It creates a sense of, I'm just coming in and I'm clocking in and doing my work. It creates a sense of, this is just something, just one other new thing that they're going to do, which is not going to work. So let me just hold down my head. Let me just stick to the way I've always been doing things. And this will go away soon enough. What happens is, as a result, there's no engagement, there's no innovation, and there's no extra effort. And this leads to inconsistent performance. If you're going to build a healthy culture, you have to take the risk of examining what are people experiencing in the culture. Do an anonymous survey. I spoke about building a cohesive team. And in building a cohesive team, you have to look at some of the dysfunctions that happen on your team. This is a model that Patrick Lencioni has in his book, The Advantage. And he also has it in his book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. If there's an absence of trust, what drives that culture is the fear of being vulnerable with the team members. And that prevents people from building trust on the team. Then you have a fear of conflict. This is the desire to preserve artificial harmony, which stifles the occurrence of productive ideological conflict. And then there's a lack of commitment. the lack of clarity or buy-in into your big, hairy, audacious goal or the end result that you have for your organization or even your team, your department, prevents the team members from making decisions that they will stick to. And then there's an avoidance of accountability. And the need to avoid interpersonal discomfort prevents team members from holding one another accountable. And then finally, there's an inattention to results. People are not pursuing their individual goals. You have 10, 15 persons on your team, and everyone is going in a different direction. The arrows are not pointing in the same way because people are now focused on their individual goals, and their personal status erodes the focus of collective success. And so, as I said before, this is a great training that Carissa Corpany does on organizational health. I'm not going to dig much into this, building a cohesive team, but this is something that's very important to shift, to move from a dysfunctional to a functional culture. Then you also want to define desired behaviors. And when I talk about desired behaviors, as I said before, you're gathering information first and foremost. Formally gather input from your staff and consolidate that information into collected thinking and clear goals and action steps. It also has to be values driven. You want to identify the values and behaviors that will best help the organization succeed. Values must drive behavior. Why? Because, again, my philosophy is this. I believe that healthy cultures produce healthy people, and people have exalted dignity, exalted value, and exalted potential. And then leaders' behaviors. For each core value, clearly define the performance and behavior that you're looking for. Edmonds from the Ken Blanchard Company says, without crystal clear guidelines about what valued behaviors are expected, people become confused about what you want them to do and how to do it in a way consistent with your core values. For each core value, have a descriptive of someone who models it. So you want leadership example. And then finally, you want to define what a teen challenge corporate citizen looks like. These are people who embody, embrace our purpose and our vision. They have the teen challenge DNA. They live out the core values. They understand what responsibility and lifelong learning and servant leadership looks like. So there is a type of person that you also want in a healthy culture. There's a type of team that fits a healthy culture. There are certain characteristics of an individual that will fit a healthy culture. And those are the people who you want to get on board with you to move your culture from dysfunctional to functional. And then finally, you want to have accountability. Hold people accountable once the values and behaviors have been identified. As the process begins to take hold, there are usually some interesting reactions from your employees. They may feel they have done this type of thing before, and this is just another thing that we're going to do, and it's not going to go anywhere. Within 4 months, everybody will forget about it. Or they may feel if they could just keep their head down low enough, things will go back to the way that it was before. I remember a story that one of our board members of Teen Challenge Southeast told at an event. Jim Blanchard, when he was president of Sinova, spoke about a culture shift that they had at their organization, which was very top-down at first. And then the staff got together, the leadership got together and decided that this was not the type of culture that we want in our organization. And they did their assessments, they evaluated it, and then they started to define what the values and behaviors are that they're looking for. And the next thing they did was they trained their staff, and they told them, this is what we are looking for, and this is what is going to become the new norm. This is what is going to be acceptable behavior in our organization. And they gave them some time, they gave the staff time to adjust to this new culture. And what happened, he said, was some people adjusted, but some couldn't. And the ones that couldn't adjust, he had to find a way to move them on to places where they could continue to behave in that dysfunctional way. And so basically some of them were actually fired because they no longer fit the culture. So if you define your values and behavior, train people on what it is that you're looking for, allow people to adjust, but there comes a time when you have to keep them accountable to the culture that you're trying to create. And then as the leader, he paved the way. As leaders, we have to lead. We have to act differently. We have to talk to our staff differently because people take their cues from their leaders. If leaders act differently, the staff and students will act differently. While a team or a department leader may not be able to influence an entire organization as a whole, they can do a lot by creating a positive subculture among the members of their own group. And then, as I said, course corrections. The example I just gave, Mr. Blanchard said, we gave them opportunities for course corrections. Persons understood what the behavior was that we were looking for, the values that was going to drive the organization. And so what that created was an opportunity for them to make course corrections in this new culture. And finally, how do you sustain it? With these pockets of excellence coming from department leaders, subcultures within the culture, that was also healthy. What happens is there is excellence that's created. People see other departments doing exceptionally well, being very productive, happy people, and they want what they see. People want what they see. Corporate efforts to solve problems and the quality of care for students or staff or families and donors change. And that is sustainable because the leaders are doing it. The staff, the team, they're doing it. The students are doing it. The students speak to their families are doing it. And the donors come in and see the culture that we're operating in. And everybody wants to be a part of it because it's a healthy culture. Healthy cultures produce healthy people. A strong working culture helps to create satisfied employees who feel cared for, trusted, and respected, which increase engagement and ultimately leads to better productivity. Some of the points I made are design and administer a teen challenge survey. Ask your people what it is that you're experiencing in their culture. And when you get that information, collaborate with your staff, collaborate with your team to come up with solutions to some of the issues that they find in the culture. Then you want to train and develop your staff to become just recovery coaches, mentors, spiritual parents. You want to develop the staff to shift, to have values that and behaviors that drive a healthy culture. Then you want to speak to a model that celebrates and recognizes people. A model that says, I see that you have exalted value, exalted dignity, and exalted potential. A model that celebrates the small victories as well along the way. And show your team that it's okay to have fun. It's okay to be involved in a community. It's okay to be involved in a local church. It's okay to be involved in some civic engagement. Then you want to fly a different way at a different pace. That's what Seth Godin says. Fly a different way at a different pace. You'll have to actually deliberately slow the pace of your program. You'll have to slow the pace, create balance in work, in their spiritual life, in their family life. You have to show our students how to behave socially. What are the ethics? What drives us, the social standards in Teen Challenge? As leaders, we should also be examples of that culture. We have to cast a shadow that people want to emulate and model. And then we want to commit ourselves to consistently sustain this culture and preserve this healthy culture. We have to pledge to operate with integrity and keep a healthy culture in the organization. And then you have to get your team to commit to uphold the values and the behaviors of the organization and to enrich the culture. So just have, what are your next steps after this webinar as you go back to your offices? What are your next steps? Your next steps are just 3 simple things. Send out a survey and assess what people are experiencing in your culture. And then probably as a part of your next team leaders meeting, distribute the findings and come up with some solutions to those findings. Then you also want to define what are the desired acceptable behaviors within our culture. Your core values are going to drive that, because your core values drive the behaviors that you will model in the culture. And then you want to answer the question, who are the culture bearers? Give people time to adjust to the new culture, the new values and behaviors. But if there are persons who are not aligning with this new culture, then you have to help them to move on and get people that are aligning with your culture in your organization, and encourage people to model, to talk the talk, but to also walk the walk. So at this time, I just want to encourage you that you can take a risk. You can move your culture from dysfunctional to a functional, healthy culture. And I believe that you can do it because, like me, you believe that healthy cultures produce healthy people. And we want to produce healthy people in Teen Challenge. Thanks for joining this webinar. And at this time, I'm going to ask and see if there are any questions for the webinar.